I hope we're not streaming when I just said that.
Yeah, we are.
That was the first thing I said on the live stream.
We are live.
This is so much better than the poop episode.
Mm-hmm. Everybody come back in. Give them a couple of minutes here. Oh, ahoy! Sue Price. Sue Prize is she's quick on the trigger. She's already back. Carissa's already back. Our patrons swinging back around. We'll give it a minute for people to. The YouTube thing is now it's starting to populate. We're back. Christy's back. Kathy's back. Valerie's back. Okay, a proper ribeye, Zach.
Are we doing this for real?
I'm just telling you, like it's because it's similar to the problem people have with a good steak is they overcook it.
So you go medium heat.
So no.
Butter.
No.
Vodka.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
No. So well, it all depends on it depends on your cooking apparatus.
Do you know how much vodka I drank on Saturday night?
I don't.
Way too much. I don't know either.
I don't either.
Not a clue. It was bad news.
Oh yeah, everybody. Josh does a reverse sear. This is what I do, and it comes out perfect.
What? Let's say someone doesn't know what a reverse sear is.
I've never done it. Josh can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's where you like get it real hot and you literally sear the outside of it, and then you take it out and like put it in the oven and bake it to finish it off. I think that's right. Sous vide. No, I don't do the sous vide. That's not for me. My kid's stepdad, Josh, always sous vide it, and Quentin like he talks shit to me about it, and it pisses me off about how
I don't even know what that means. So
it's where it's like you put it in a like I said, this is not how you cook a steak.
Okay, just to catch everybody up, we're talking about food, and he's trying to explain how to cook a steak when I just talked about eating a pound of chicken tenders.
Yes,
so
that pretty much sears it up.
That's a forward sear.
That's a forward sear. So maybe the other way around. Again, I don't do it that way. The sous vide, though, is definitely not the way. Like, you can't be proud of yourself after sous vide in a steak. You take your steak and you put it into a Ziploc baggie, and then you clip it onto a pan of water, and then you put this little machine into the water that, like, somehow heats up the water, transfers the heat to the... I don't know how they work. That's what sous videing is. It's a thing you clip on the side of the pan that's in the water.
So you're boiling steak.
Yeah, and you do that, and then they'll like throw it on a grill or something and cook it afterwards. I don't know. Like I'm not putting my steak in a Ziploc baggie. No, thank you.
No.
Colin says very hot pan, both sides 2 minutes outside. So this is what I do when I cook. See, I like to cook on the big green egg. Then the beautiful part about the big green egg is you can get that sucker cranking up to about 900 degrees. So I get her going 900. We up there.
That's good because that thing weighs 900 pounds.
Yeah. If I move again, I'm just leaving it here because I don't think I'll get you to help me again.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you vacuum seal it and cook it in hot water for sous vide. No, thank you. But anyway, I get the grill going about 900 degrees. You open it up.
I can't believe we're still doing it.
You throw the steaks on, and I'm timing. I have a timer. Throw it on, 2 minutes, exactly 2 minutes. Open it up, flip them over, 2 minutes. Open it up, flip them over, close the lid, and shut it down. So like shut both vents down so there's no more flame. It's just hot smoke for 3.5 minutes. And then it's done. But here's the trick. Here's your little firefighter trick for you. There's a thing called a backdraft, which is when you have...
I've seen the movie.
Yeah, well, that's bullshit, the movie. But a backdraft is when you have, the elements of a fire triangle, right? Like heat, fuel, and oxygen. So you have all the heat and all the fuel, but you've cut off the oxygen. And then what happens is when you open it up, it introduces oxygen into that mix of superheated gases, and it's literally explosive. It'll like blow I've forgotten and done it, and have blown the hair off the sides of my arms and my eyebrows. So right before 3.5 minutes, and then quick open both vents to let the heat out. Open real slow. Open it up. Take them right off the heat. Perfect. They're just seared. The fat is like crispy and rendered on the side, and in the middle, the inside is still very pink, nice and medium rare. That's how you cook a steak.
So you're telling me Hollywood got it wrong?
Huh?
You're telling me Hollywood got it wrong?
Shockingly.
Which Baldwin is in that? Steven? Billy?
I think it's Steven. I think it's Steven. It's not Alec. No. Brian says make sure you burp the egg. That's you're exactly what I just described. I've never called it burping the egg, but yeah, that's what you're doing.
Because of the backdraft.
Yeah.
like the movie.
Yeah, because you
Just
have
like the movie.
full of fuel, full of superheated gases, and you open up the oxygen, and it'll just blow you right out of there.
Bob said that movie is perfectly accurate. I heard him.
Yeah, Backdraft. How they're all like walking around with fire, and the floor's on fire, and there's no smoke, and you can see everywhere. Very hot pan, 2 minutes.
Chris says Billy.
Inside.
Can we start?
Oven then here. Yes, we can start. Are you ready to go?
I don't know. Probably.
Trying to decide.
Probably not.
Why don't you talk to the chat for a minute? I just want to take a preemptive bathroom trip before we start.
Okay.
So I don't get stuck in the middle of it. Be right back.
Oh my goodness. It's right up there with me. Oh, I thought he was going to touch me again. He usually touches me on the way. I panicked. Okay, guys. I panicked. You guys could see me. Maybe he beats me. Maybe that's why I flinch like that. Tell the world that. Tell the world he beats me. That's how he keeps his employees. He beats them. The price of steak. I don't know, man. I'm not a steak guy, guys. Like I've had like a couple of good steaks, but all the steak talk is like way over my head. I'm chicken nuggets. I'm one of those chicken tender adults, like Sue said. I can't help it. God, that was one of. I guess I can't say that's the worst pregame we've done, but it was interesting. We talked about eggs for 45 minutes. Yeah, Josh, we're going to talk about that. I don't know how common they are, but we're going to talk about that today. Actually, I brought that up before we came in. I actually brought my 38 special with me. Not that it matters because it's an audio podcast, but I actually have it with me. So yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that, Josh. This was better than Poop Talk. It sure was. It sure was a whole lot better than Poop Talk. Joshua Tice, it's nice to see you, my friend. Yep. What's the crown thing in the chat? I don't know. I don't even see a crown thing in the chat. I'll stab you.
Do you know that I wore this shirt on purpose?
So you could be Three Oaksed.
So you
Three Oaksed out.
I wanted you to comment on the fact that I'm a hypocrite because I'm wearing a Three Oaks shirt, but I am not, because I was going to point out that I'm not wearing a Three Oaks shirt. This shirt was designed this way.
I am not smart enough to remember that for that long a time.
Mm-hmm. No, it's upsetting. All right, let's end this thing and let's start the real show. Enough silliness for one day. Patrons, thanks for joining us. And I forgot how to end the show.
Bye, guys.
That's it. Bye, guys.
I said bye. I said bye.
I heard you. You said it twice. All right. Got your intro all ready?
What? Oh, yeah. I do. As long as I read the right one.
And here we go.
Oh, yeah. We don't have to clap today. Nope. Ahoy, friends. Thank you for tuning into Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for Season 17, Episode 2, The Triple Homicide. This week, Bob broke down what we're calling Crime Scene 1, and we also heard the breakdown of testimonies from the initial arriving officers, the crime scene investigator, and the medical examiner. We have a lot of questions this week and a lot to discuss. We are sans Janet, but Bob and I are here to discuss it all. But before we dive into that, I don't think there's any housekeeping, but maybe there is.
Just a little bit. I know a bunch of people were asking about the latest undisclosed episode, which had some pretty shocking new information in it. We're not going to be talking about this. I've listened to it. Zach has listened to it. But Janet has threatened us with our lives if we have that conversation before she's back. And since she's not here this week, and we have a ton of questions this week for this episode about our case. So we're going to hold off next week. We'll have a little bit of a conversation at the end about the undisclosed in the Adnan Syed case. So we haven't forgotten about that. We're not ignoring it. We just want to wait till Janet's here to have that conversation. And also, I just want to real quick thank you guys, for those of you that are not on Patreon and you get the ads. You heard us. We've been kind of running an ad for people, encouraging people to join Patreon. We originally, because we got several people that have taken us up on that and have joined the Patreon and are now in the live streams and the pregame shows and all that stuff. I was actually going to list off the names and shout out the names of the new patrons, but we got a bunch of them. So it's too many for me to waste a whole bunch of time on. So for all of you, I just want to thank you guys all so much. You have no idea how much it means to us. I'm sure you all have noticed that some of your favorite podcasts right now are not even doing sabbaticals anymore. They're just ending their shows. Pretty tough time in the industry right now. And, literally the only reason that we are able to continue working is because of our Patreon. I'll just tell you guys, just to put it in perspective, if you've paid attention to the live ad reads that we did for the month of July this week, or this month. For the entire month, 8 episodes, we had one single ad for the whole month, which is enough to like that. That's why podcasts are closing their doors right now and shutting off, because it's hard to survive. So just thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all of you who are joining Patreon and being a part of that community and literally making it possible to keep our work, because we just can't justify doing this, if it's costing us thousands of dollars a month to run the show. That being said, this was a pretty information-packed episode, and hopefully things are starting to come together. A lot of it, I think, raised more questions than answers in a lot of ways, but and we have a ton of questions. So first, though, I want to get into Zach. What did you think about the first episode about getting into the meat and potatoes of the crime scene?
So obviously I was gone last week, so I'll kind of talk about both episodes. Jumping into this case, really, really fascinating. Really fascinating, the idea that there are 5 victims, 2 crime scenes. This season is going to be a doozy, I feel like. I mean, we've had some good seasons, but I don't know that we've ever had anything to this scale.
Yeah.
As far as this particular episode with the triple homicide, going with crime scene 1, I really thought about a lot of the firearm stuff in this, more so than any of the I'm not a crime scene guy. I mean, I listen, I try to figure things out. I'm not a crime scene guy. I am a firearms guy.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of little firearms tidbits that I wrote down. I know we do have a lot of questions, so I could probably jump into those as we get there. But I think this case is extremely fascinating, and especially with the idea that we have a witness and the changing statements from the witness. Man, I don't know what's happening. Like, I am so confused.
That was such a shock. I mean, obviously, I know like the broad, like Erica, the way our process works, Erica knows way more about this case than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I when we did our initial screening, Erica screened it. We went, and Dr. Nikki Jackson and Timmy, we went there. They pitched it to us. We went through a lot of information there. I looked at certain bullet points that I look for to see if I think it's a potential wrongful conviction. This is one of the few times where I'm like, I think back to like Sandy Melgar's case, or like right off, I'm like, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is absolutely a wrongful conviction. But then, but now that I have Erica here, able to do a lot of the research and summarizing and get ahead, what it allows me to do is to truly try to do this in real time with you guys, because I can ask a question about how things come together, and she knows because she has that. But I think what was missed in this case from the very beginning were assumptions made right off the bat.
Yeah.
And in this case, so I'm able to take and say, let's look at just this crime scene. And as I said in this episode, these 2 crime scenes very well may be connected. They probably are connected. I don't know. But I'm trying to approach this from, let's look at one piece at a time. That being said, when I found the Dame report, I was shocked because Larry, obviously, I've seen his statements.
Yeah.
And I know like they're changing there. I've seen what he said in his deposition years later. I know there's a problem there, but to know right off the bat, like right from the get-go, that we have the officer that says he told me, he has no idea who it was, and then he's not called to testify, but the other officer is, and he says, oh, he told me Chris did it. Like, it's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
It's complete bullshit. I also want to point out, and this is even more so the case in the episodes coming this week about the ball field crime scene. We're doing these crime scenes, both of them, again, because what I've done is, in this first round through them, we use trial testimony, because I want you guys to hear what the jury heard, because I want you to have an idea of how Chris got convicted, right? So this is what the jury heard. This is the narrative that they heard. The house crime scene is a tough one to kind of piece things together, as far as like the forensics and the gunshot wound trajectories and things like that. I'm working all that. That's what's going to be coming up next week. The ball field is not the ball field. You have this big crime scene, right? So it's spread out. It's outdoors, and we're getting into all those details this week and in a future episode. But I will tell you this: the narrative that was presented at trial about that crime scene, which this has been tough for me writing this episode, because I wrote the episode I had Erica outlined based on the trial transcripts from the crime. It's same format as this week, right? So it's the first arriving officers, crime scene investigators, autopsy, or the medical examiner. This is what happened. This is what they testified to. This is what the jury heard. So I write this whole thing, and then I start going back through trying to, confirm things and going back through crime scene photos and stuff, and nothing is making sense to me. Like, I can't make heads or tails out of this crime scene. I end up on the phone with one of Chris's attorneys for about an hour and a half yesterday, and we're like walking through some original, like the written reports from, not the trial testimony, but the original source documents where there's measurements taken, and we're trying to draw diagrams and figuring out. And once we got the diagram done, it's like, this is not at all the picture that was painted at trial. And so, like, I've kind of had this moment today of, do I rewrite or do we continue? So I think what I'm going to do is continue, like, give you the trial testimony version of it. And then we're going to do what we do, which is we're going to do our deep dive analysis of the crime scene and see what we come up with. But it's tough. But yeah, getting back into this one, like you said, I'm so glad you're here this week because there's a lot of firearms questions. Yeah. And I think the best thing to do, we have so many. Let's get into them.
So I do have a question that I do not think is covered. I was kind of glancing through them. In the episode, there's a lot of discussion about photos and things being moved from one photo to another, and just discrepancies throughout, right? And we know that there was a victim possibly alive when first responders got there.
Yeah.
What is the protocol as a former first responder yourself to when you're taking life-saving measures? What is the protocol on a crime scene?
In my experience in the jurisdictions I worked in, we would call that a load and go.
Okay.
Like, if you get there and you have a critical patient that needs to go, like, there, so we have there's a set of incident priorities that we use for fire, police, EMS, all use. The acronym is LIP. It's our incident priorities are life safety, incident stabilization, and then property conservation. So for like, if you take like a fire, for example, so when we pull up, there's a lot going on, right? You show up, the house is on fire, things are happening. There's a million things that need to be done. So we use those incident priorities to establish what do we do first. First things first, life safety. So, and in the fire service, it's the first responders' life safety first, the victim's life safety second. Because if we're dead or hurt, we can't help anybody. And so the first thing is go in and do a search, see if anybody's inside, walk around the outside, see if anybody's hanging out of a window, whatever. First things first is save lives. Once that's done, then it's incident stabilization, which means, okay, this house is on fire. Next thing we need to do is make sure the house next door doesn't catch on fire. Keep it contained. Or if it's like an interior structure fire, the back bedroom's on fire, let's keep it in the back bedroom, right? So you start, protecting the areas around it, working your way to it. Then property conservation, which is where you, then actually go put the fire out and stop the fire from spreading any further within the area that's already burning. That's just kind of a general idea of how that works. You're supposed to work investigation, like having the investigation in mind throughout that process.
Okay.
But it doesn't supersede particularly life safety. So meaning if you see there's a trash can blocking the fire hydrant, that's something you obviously have to move it to get to hook up to it, but it's something you should be taking a note of. You're not trying to, when we put a fire out, a lot of times we take things and put them outside that are hot. Like, say a mattress is burning, you put it out, throw it out in the front yard so that it doesn't rekindle and start over again. And then we tear down ceilings and things like that to, for attic fires. We always have investigation in mind. So, like, we're not going to tear the ceiling down if we don't have to, because there's burn patterns on the ceiling we want to see. So at that point, once we're already past life safety, once we're already past incident stabilization, once we're already past property conservation, like if the fire's out, we will then maybe come in with the camera and try to take some photos of the burn patterns before we pull the ceiling down.
Okay.
So that's obviously a fire version of that. In this case, it would be the same thing. You get there, your first incident priority is life safety. So you have a critical patient that could be saved. You never, ever sacrifice that life for the investigation. The life's first. So all that being said, the fact that the first couple photos are taken on a Polaroid makes me think that probably that Trevino or Dame had a Polaroid camera. A lot of officers they'll keep, like, they're not crime scene investigators, but they'll have like a camera with them. That's like while the EMS is there working the patient, they're like, let me quick take a couple pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what happened. What I found odd about it is it's not discussed at trial.
Yeah.
Like, or in the reports. So it's just the fact that we don't know. It's also a little weird that gauze is there, which looks like they have started treating the patient, but there's nobody on the patient. But that could have been too. The first responders come in, they check her. This one is still alive. Run back and grab the gurney in a backboard or whatever, so they can get her out of there. I don't know.
Okay, so like EMS would arrive. Their first responsibility is to take care of that person.
Yes,
regardless of any evidence that could be around that person.
Right, and you do your best to preserve evidence. Like you don't want to just knock shit all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, your number one priority is you have a living victim. You is to save the life of that victim. That is number one priority.
Okay, so could that be part of the discrepancies in the photo?
I think so. They were obviously taken. They weren't taken by Bertossi.
Yeah,
we know that because his were all taken with a 35 millimeter, and Suzanne was gone when he got there. So we know they weren't taken by him. So, but this is what I don't like. And as I said in the episode, it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Meaning it's like, it's not changing the outcome. I don't think of what happened. I don't think it's anything nefarious. What I don't like and what I continue to not like about the trial testimonies and even some of the reporting is there are big gaps. And this isn't the Bridgman Police Department that doesn't deal with it's Gary, Indiana, the murder capital of the United States at the time.
Yeah.
Like they have very experienced homicide investigators. So like all these gaps and all these unanswered questions are troublesome to me, is kind of really the only point that I was making with it.
Okay. Well, I think we can move into the questions now if you want.
Okay.
So our first question is from Anna, and it says, if Larry heard two voices, did the prosecution ever go for an accomplice or just Chris?
Good question. Chris is the only person that has ever been convicted of this crime.
That's crazy. And that reminds me of like Jennifer Jeffley, like in that case.
Yeah.
Where they didn't even think she was the murderer per se.
Yeah. She was convicted of being the lookout for the murderer, and they made zero effort in all these years to find who actually killed her.
And it sounds like, it sounds like in all probability that there was an accomplice. There was a second shooter. There was a second person based on, everything we know so far.
Well, and again, as always, I'd like to go back to the source documents,
Mm-hmm.
and we see consistently in both Dame and Trevino's testimony, Dame's report, that Larry told them he heard two voices. Now, saying that, that one of the voices was Chris is very inconsistent with everything.
Yeah.
But in both cases, and Dame's report seems to be like he's just documenting what he said. He said he heard two male voices, and then he heard shots. Well, I do want to point out too, one thing that isn't clear. So we know from Larry's testimony, which again, it's hard to know what's the truth in there. But in his testimony, he says there was a group of two guys that came and were in the living room and were talking and arguing earlier in the night.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was awakened by the shooting. Well, in like Dame's report, it says that he heard two male voices in the shooting. I'm wondering, was Larry saying, I heard voices and shooting like in the same sequence at 2 a.m. or whatever? Or was he trying to explain to them that those two voices that he heard were earlier in the night? Because you notice those reports don't say anything about the previous trip. So I'm wondering, so I think the tendency is to want to connect him hearing the two voices in the shooting. But I think there's a good chance he was talking about the two voices from the previous trip, if that previous trip even happened.
Interesting. Okay. So we are going to move into some gun stuff based on these questions. These are 38 caliber specific questions at the moment. So from Allison, well, I guess this one isn't. So we're going to move into some gun questions here. This one's from Allison. It says, what were the streets and neighborhood like? Were the neighbors right next door or across the street? It sounds like no one else reported the gunshots. Is there any kind of place the shooters could have been noticed as they were driving up at the time of night?
So if you go on the fan page or on our website for episode 2, I put some aerial photos up that I put together where I mapped out where everything was at, just to give you guys perspective. So you can see what the house looked like in the neighborhood. It's a pretty densely populated neighborhood. If you're staring at the house from the street, looking at the front of the house, there was another house directly to the left of it. And then to the right of it looks like a vacant lot. There's nothing to the right of it. And there are houses across the street. I would assume the car was just if they, and also we're assuming they drove there. They could have walked there. But there's they could have parked in the lot next to it. They could have parked in the street. But I found it interesting too that there's no, and again, here's another one of those gaps. There's no indication that I've seen so far that they canvassed the neighborhood, that there was another 911 call. It's the way this case was investigated, from the way the file looks to me, is they were able to strong arm Chris into confessing within 24 hours. Wow. And that was the end of the investigation.
Wow.
Like that was it. They're like, we got our guy. We don't need to look into anything else. Because, we're going to get into this later, but, I want to know, where were Liz and Sheila? Like, where did they go? Did they make it to the liquor store? Did anybody see them? Did they talk to anybody?
I did not realize it was that quick. 24 hours in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right away. They solved a quadruple homicide in 24 hours.
Holy shit.
But yeah, like there's no information about that.
Yeah.
Like they never tried to find any of that information. And so I don't know, because a lot of people were pointing out, like, how did no one report gunshots at 2 a.m? Gary, Indiana was a violent place. I don't think gunshots were terribly uncommon.
Yeah.
It's also 2 o'clock in the morning. And if you're, it's wintertime, so everything's sealed up tight. So if the shots are coming from in the house, that's going to muffle it a little bit.
So before you continue, Linwood actually has this question about like how loud is a 38 caliber revolver when it goes off? Just trying to find a logical explanation for 9 shots being fired at 2 a.m. without neighbors calling. So that's the next question. So as we're on it, we'll go ahead and continue.
Yeah. I don't know. It could be, so it would be muffled. So if somebody's like in their bedroom sleeping in the house next door, the sound's going to be muffled from the house it's in, plus their exterior walls.
So that's exactly, that, in my opinion, that's exactly, these aren't gunshots on the street, right?
Yeah.
Gunshots on the street are going to appear a lot louder. You're already in an insulated environment. Gunshots aren't what you see on TV. They are loud. It's a loud clap and it's over. And if you're in a house that's insulated, shots, then the neighbors are in a house that's insulated. There's very low probability you're going to hear it. Or if you hear it, it's not recognizable as gunshots.
Right.
You may hear what honestly sounds like a clap.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be recognizable as what everybody thinks a gunshot sounds like.
Yeah, like it's going to shake you out of a dead sleep.
Absolutely not. It could be anything from a car backfiring to a branch breaking.
Right. And I was thinking too, like even with 9, if there were 9 shots, you start, because I think about even here. So I live out in the country, very low crime area. There's gunshots around here, a lot just from people target shooting or whatever. But oftentimes we'll hear, people outside shooting, and it's gunshots way off in a distance. And you're like, what is that? Is it fireworks? Is it, like, what's going on? What's that noise? Is it gunshots? Like, it's hard to, and I know guns. But yeah, so the amount of sound insulation there would be between the shots being fired in that house into somebody else's house in their bedroom, and then add in the fact that it's 2 a.m. and they're sound asleep. I think I don't think it's loud enough that are going to wake up most people.
I don't think so either. And we do have, it's a pistol. Pistols, while they are loud, they're not the same. A rifle is extremely loud. A rifle is a concussion that is, is deafening. A pistol is a loud pop. It's not this violent. It's loud, but it's not this crazy violent noise you expect it to be.
Yeah.
So I truly, it's not alarming to me that the neighbors didn't call.
Yeah, me neither. And also the fact that they're close range shots matters. Because the rounds actually, generate more sound as they're moving and breaking the sound barrier through time and space.
Yeah.
And if their bullets are only going 2 feet or less than, that's going to affect the sound. And also just from like a sound perspective, like I'm like looking around our little studio here. One thing you want to do to muffle sound is to have a lot of soft items. Look around that living room.
Yeah.
There's couches and mattresses and blankets and pillows and just all kinds of stuff in that room that are going to stop that kind of echoing effect from the gunshot. So yeah, I don't think I don't know if anybody else called it in. There's no indication anyone did, but it also doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either. The next question is from Elise. It says, how long does the smell of gunpowder linger? Minutes, seconds? I was surprised that the detectives on the scene could still smell it.
That's probably better. Yeah, I can just give you just anecdotally, from like being at the range and stuff. That's outside.
Yeah.
It's maybe a minute and that smell goes away, but I don't know about
I would say in a non-ventilated area, like a house, like a room, I mean, maybe up to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But that, I feel like that is even really pushing it.
It doesn't stick around for a long time.
Does not stick around for a super long time. And I think 5 minutes is probably even really pushing it. But it's all about ventilation, right? Like outdoors, it has somewhere to go. If you're shooting on an indoor range, there's a ventilation system that moves it. But in a house that's stuffy, like we're in a room right now that has actually zero ventilation going on right now.
Yeah.
It would probably linger for, 3 to 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah. And it's hard to know exactly, but also, it just draws into question a lot of it. I told you guys last week that weirdly in one of Larry's early statements, he says that the shooting happened at specifically 2:05 a.m.
Yeah.
But he didn't call the police till like 20 minutes later. We don't know what that gap in time was or if 2:05 has any kind of anchor or anything like that. But I find it doubtful because I don't think you would still smell gunpowder 20 minutes later.
I don't think so either. No matter how good the officer sniffer is, I don't think it's there.
Well, and he said that it was a strong odor of gunpowder because you might still smell it a little bit, but you wouldn't like walk in and be like, oh, wow, a gun was just fired in here.
Yeah. No, I have to agree. So these next set of questions are about the number of shots. This one comes from Kelsey. Just want to clarify, is Bob already eliminating the possibility that there was only one shooter with 2 guns or one shooter with only 6 rounds, despite the 9 round wounds? Or does he feel like it's most likely the scenario is 2 gunmen?
I just think it's the most likely scenario. Nothing is ruled out right now because we haven't even done our like one thing, like the thing they're going to be working on next week is I'm trying to figure out trajectories. So for example, I kind of hinted at this in the episode, but Anthony had a shot through his forearm and a shot through his face. Well, are those 2 different shots, or is it possible? And for those who are on the video live stream, see what I'm talking about. But like, if he's covering his face with his arm, could that be one shot that went through his arm and into his face?
I'd be curious to see what the medical examiner says in the autopsies, because little graphic here for a second. The entry wound on the arm would be a lot smaller than the entry wound on the face, and I say a lot. It wouldn't be
if it was the same bullet passing through.
If it's the same bullet, I mean, maybe not to the eye, but they measure those,
right?
And it would be larger. You know what I mean? As it enters the arm, it's going to hit a bone. It's going to hit anything. It's going to expand a little bit before it exits the arm to enter the face. So that wound, the second wound, if it is a second wound from the same projectile, should be larger than if it was just a straight shot.
Yeah. And I want to look at the wound tracks too, because the way he testified was odd. Like he talked about there was a gunshot wound to the face and the gunshot wound to the back of the head. But I want to do like wound path tracing, because like the way he worded it, it's not clear. Could that be the same shot?
Could it be an entry and exit?
Right. Like entry in the back of the head, exit out the front. I also want to know, did they recover? Because all the slugs should have been recovered, right? Either in the bodies or on the ground. We should know if there were 9 bullets found.
Yeah.
And
I'm curious, like I said, I mean, I know we're going to get into that, but that would be the same thing with the entry and exit. Entry wound is much smaller than an exit wound. Right. So it seems like all that should be listed.
Well, this is something I know just from having worked several of these cases and even having a personal experience with this with somebody who took their own life. A lot of time with a contact head wound, it's actually the opposite because of the blast, because of the gases that come out,
concussion that comes out.
Yeah, because I've had 2 different cases I can think of where it looked like the kind of the witness account was they held the gun to say their right temple and exited the left, and then you look at it and you got this tiny little hole on the left side and this big massive hole on the right. So it looks like that's the exit wound and it went the other direction, and then come to find out it was because the muzzle was pressed against the skin, and so there was a big blast on the right side where the muzzle was pressed against it, and a small, because the bullet in that short space didn't have enough time to fully expand to make the exit wound bigger.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. This one's from Kate. It says, here's another scenario that could possibly make reloading feasible. The 2 women were shot 2 times first incapacitating them. Then the assailant shoots Anthony, then reloads and goes back and shoots the 2 women up close execution style. To me, this makes more sense than a shooter firing 2 times from afar than one up close while the other 2 witnesses are in the same room free to move.
Yeah, as I said in the episode, I have a hard time coming up with a scenario because of the nature of the wounds. So, like, because of Anthony's position in the chair and the blood under the chair, I think I'm very confident in saying that he was shot, that after he was shot at least once, he was still able to get up and move, right? Because he got up off of that chair and then ends up face down, a little bit, like he took a couple steps and then fell forward when he was shot in the back of the head. And even the wounds on Suzanne and Angela, I don't know because it's not very well described in the testimony. If anything besides the final shots to the head would have been fatal or even completely incapacitating. Obviously, the arm wound wouldn't. But so then, even if you're talking whatever, and that's kind of what I was getting at in the episode when I was talking about if the first 6 shots were, 2 into this one, 2 into this one, 2 into this one. Well, if none of them have had the shot, the kill shot to the back of the head yet, I think all of them would have been capable of talking, screaming, maybe not moving, but probably moving too. Like, there's just not a scenario that I can think of. And also, again, we're talking 6 shots, but a lot of, in fact, most of the 38 calibers that I've ever come across are not actually 6 shots; they're 5 shots. Zach actually brought one today, and it's a 5 shot.
It is a 5 shot.
So you may be even talking about 5 shot revolvers, especially like cheaper ones are usually 5 shots.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around any possibility of a reload. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't have happened. Like, I will leave it on the table that it could have happened.
Yeah.
But in an instance like this, anytime you're shooting, even in just a target practice style, you get an adrenaline bump.
Yeah.
Like, even just shooting a paper target, there's this adrenaline bump from firing that firearm. So I have to imagine someone comes in blitzkrieg style and starts shooting people. There's so much adrenaline going that you are losing all your fine motor skills. And I don't think people quite understand how hard it is to reload a revolver on its own, let alone when your fine motor skills are just out the window because you're so jacked up.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you couldn't reload it. It's going to take a long time. And I don't see an assailant wanting to shoot and then stand there for even 30 seconds. I mean, maybe it doesn't take 30 seconds, but 30 seconds feels like an eternity in that scenario.
Especially because I think if that's the case, you can count on at least one victim is still alive and conscious.
Correct.
At that point.
And if you're having to reload at least 3 rounds and there's no shells, spent casings to be found, which means not only do they do that, they had to open the cylinder, remove the shells. Even if they did it fluidly, they have to get all 5 or 6 shells, put them in a pocket, and then fish out 3 more, at least 3 more, to finish shooting.
Right.
And be able to get them in the cylinder, close the cylinder, get it on the right cylinder, let alone
when you spin it. Yeah.
When you spin it, and then continue fire. It just seems so improbable to me.
I agree 100%. And people have mentioned, like, well, they're speed loaders. Well, first, I don't think, this I don't think someone coming in to commit this crime is carrying a speed loader.
I wholeheartedly agree. Coming from a competitive shooting background, there is like revolver shooting tournaments, and these guys use speed loaders. They are such a niche thing, and they're so hard to come across that I don't know, not an average person would have one of these.
Right.
Like, you have to almost special order one of these or go to a gun store that specializes in competitive shooting, because any other reason you don't need a speed loader.
Right.
I mean, it just,
and also when people think about speed loading, that means you could put the new rounds in quickly. You still got to get the old rounds out.
Correct.
And Zach and I were talking about this before we came in. Like, even like in the best case scenario, you open the revolver, you roll out the cylinder, and then you tip the gun up and you drop the rounds out.
Yeah.
But even that's how, like, competitive shooters do it, and people who take very good care of their guns.
Yeah.
Because in order for that to happen, those cylinders where the rounds go in have to be filed, cleaned, and oiled for those, because generally speaking, even like I take pretty good care of any of my weapons. And the revolvers, I don't have any right now, but back I used to have a revolver. It's actually a 30 caliber revolver like this. Yeah, you'd open it up and tip it over, and maybe 3 of them would fall out. But the other ones, you had to like press. There's a little rod on the gun I had that you could like slide to pop the other rounds out because they get stuck in there.
Yeah,
it's not like a quick. And so then it's even with a speed loader, it's open the gun, open it. Even if it's perfectly maintained, you drop the 5 rounds into your hand, or 6 rounds, put them in your pocket, then get your speed loader. And even with if you had a speed loader, again, like having the dexterity and wherewithal to like that, they're not easy.
correct.
Like people practice with them a lot to be able to do it. It just, I just do not, I don't see a scenario where there was a reload.
I don't either.
So I think there was either only 6 shots, or there was 2 shooters, or there was 1 person with 2 guns.
And if any listener wants to actually see what this looks like, there's a phenomenal shooter named Jerry Michalik. You can find YouTube videos all over the place, who is a revolver shooter, world champion. He's the fastest revolver shooter in the world. And even watching him, it takes a few seconds. And he is the best in the world at doing this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can go out there, Jerry Michalik on YouTube. Let's see. Garrett says, I 100% agree with the conclusion that this is 2 shooters. I didn't hear you mention it, but there was a ballistics testing done on the recovered slug. I didn't hear you mention it, but was there a ballistics testing done on the recovered slug or the jackets? How many guns and shooters did the police reports conclude?
So we're going to do a whole episode on forensics, getting into details, the big picture view of it, from my understanding, because I've read them, but it was a while. I remember when I read them, I wasn't convinced. And essentially what it came down to was it was the same type of, at both crime scenes, the same type of bullet, which was a very, copper jacketed bullet.
Yeah.
And 30 caliber. And I as I'm saying 30 caliber, not 38, because the same round could be fired out of a 357 Magnum.
Correct.
As well, or a 38 special. So that wasn't necessarily, they keep saying 38, but it could have been a 357. And the little bit of like, I think it's something like all of the rounds that they were able to get any kind of markings on all had like a right hand twist, and five peaks and valleys, whatever they called it. Like, so essentially what they came up with is all the rounds were fired out of a 30 caliber pistol with a right hand twist, which is almost every 30 caliber pistol in the world. So it's, again, like I said, are they connected? I don't know. Could they be? Are they? Probably. But also, like, there's not convincing evidence. They're not like, we were able to find unique markings on these bullets and those bullets, and we know for a fact that they were shot from the same gun. There isn't anything like that.
So just spitballing here as we're thinking about it, what is the lowest possible ability of shots? So 6 shots, right? We're counting 9 bullet wounds.
Yeah.
But we know that there's at least 2 per victim that are separated.
Well, so we got 2 of them were shot in the arm, which they call defensive wounds. So I think that could lower the number by 2, possibly.
Okay,
we're gonna get into that if they like went through the arm into the.
So that puts it at 7.
So then that would still require 2 shooters or a reload. The only other possibility is, which again I have to go through the autopsy and go through the wound tracking, and is to verify if, because I know AMP, and I don't remember. I think it was either Angela or Suzanne. Had both like 2 shots to the head, right? And so I need to verify, is it possible that's entry and exit? Because that's the only way you get down to 6 is if you have if the both shots to the arms pass through and also hit the body, and then if 2 of the head wounds were from the same shot.
Okay,
that's the only way you could get down to 6.
Okay. So Susan says, I think there could have only been 7 shots. The 2 arm shots being defensive wounds ending up in the head, making this gun a possibility. She's referring to the Taurus 608, which has an 8-round capacity. Bob and I actually talked about this exact firearm before we got in recording today. There is a 38 caliber firearm that has an 8-round capacity, it's not an easy firearm to find. It's an expensive firearm to find.
Very expensive.
And I for anybody committing a crime like this or any crime, I just don't see them having
Not buying a $2,000 gun.
Exactly. Like,
but also is a different gun than we were talking about. You were talking about a revolver that has 8 rounds.
Oh yes,
the Taurus 608 is actually a semi-automatic.
Okay.
And so that one, so that's like where the magazine or the clip, as people call it, is into the handle.
Yeah.
Semi-automatic that has an 8 round, which actually is 9 because it's 8 in the. You could put 1 in the chamber, 8 in the clip, or in the magazine. The problem with that is
the Taurus 608 is a revolver.
What was it?
It just had the diagram that she posted was of a different firearm, but the 608 is a revolver.
Oh, okay. So yeah, there's that, because the diagram that she had posted with that was of a semi-automatic, and I think we can absolutely rule out a semi-automatic because that would have ejected the shells, all the shell casings all over the living room.
Yeah.
So that was going to be my point with it. But yeah, Chrissy says, could it be stolen? Yeah, look, it's not impossible that the offender had one of those guns. It's just very unlikely. They are extremely rare guns. They are extremely expensive guns. Like if they stole it from someone, that's not like there's an investigation into that because that's a very expensive gun.
It really is. And there is a 38 caliber semi-automatic gun. It's called a 38 Super. Those are even more expensive. Like that's definitely not.
And again, I think we can rule out any semi-automatic.
This is just anecdotal, but that is so expensive for the rounds for that I've shot with guys that shoot a 38 Super, and those guys literally walk around collecting their own brass on a range, which most people just, the brass spits out on a range, gets swept away. Those guys will literally crawl on their hands and knees to find their own brass because it's that expensive.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here. Sophie says, in a reload scenario, is it possible that a single shooter, if they shot each victim at least once, they did connect with the final shots after reloading to make sure they were actually dead?
Again, it's all, we're still talking about all these different possible scenarios. I guess the best I can say to any of those types of questions is I just don't think it's plausible. I do not think there was a reload. And again, the reason this is super important is because by trial, Larry gives this story because they're trying to match things up with Chris's statements, and they're trying to build what happened in this case was they got Chris to sign a confession, and then they tried to back in all the evidence, right? They tried to they tried to make the evidence fit Chris. They went from, in a case that this complicated, they went from evidence-based investigation to suspect-based investigation immediately. So the investigation was, how do we prove Chris did this, not how do we find out what happened, right? So, and that's what the reason this is important is because part of that testimony is they were having a conversation about reloading in the middle of it. I don't think that happened. Correct. I just do not.
So Jen brings up a point we already talked about, which is about the speed loaders, and asks if it's true that it could be quick and easy. So I will say this, it absolutely is plausible that someone proficient with it could reload a revolver quickly. It takes hours and hours and hours and hours of practice to be able to reload a revolver quickly, even with a speed loader. So yes, it could happen. This person could be so proficient at reloading that maybe they could. I wouldn't take it off the table. It's highly, highly implausible that it is. I don't foresee someone that's committing a heinous double murder is the same person that's spending hundreds of hours practicing how to reload a revolver.
Also, think about this practically speaking, if that's the case. So Larry says there's 2 voices. So we're trying to think of a scenario where only one of those voices has a gun, and that person has to reload in the middle of it. And that person is so proficient that they're able to quickly and quietly and not lose any of the empty shells, reload his weapon. Do you think that the other person has to tell him, hey, buddy, you got to reload to finish shooting them?
Yeah. No.
Like, why would that conversation happen?
Correct.
Like, no shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even catch that or think of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. If they're so proficient to reload, There's nobody that there's no reason for someone to tell them to reload.
Like the other guys counting his shots, like that was 6. You got to reload.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
So Solomon says, I agree with the multiple shooters, but I feel that there was more than 2. Those shots would have been loud and the wounds indicate movement with the victims. Quick, yes, but with more shooters, the murder is less likely to have anybody walking, fighting, or escaping. Unless this is why we have 2 crime scenes, because someone did escape and was caught. Or it could be wrong. There's a lot going on with this case, but Truth and Justice Army is here.
I think there was 2. I don't think there was more than 2. And I say that because I think you could easily control that room, those 3 people with 2 guns. So one big question we talked about, I know there's a question about this later, so I won't get into it, but there's a question about the door being locked or unlocked. One thing I was thinking of, so Amp obviously was in that chair that got knocked over at some point. If you haven't been to our website, go to the website, look at the photos, you can see what I'm talking about. When I look closer at there's a picture that is like zoomed in on the blood on the ground next to the chair. And if you look at the chair, what I noticed after I recorded the episode is that there's a book under the metal bottom of the chair, which means, so it's not like that chair being tipped back. It's not like he was just sitting in it and then it tipped back. That chair got moved, like shuffled quickly. So I'm not so sure now that he was ever sitting in it. I think he might have fell into it.
Oh, that would make sense.
And like in the, a book falls off the nightstand or the end table because it's just one of those weird things. The book is under the leg of the chair. So it obviously wasn't like that before. So there was so what I'm getting at is a possibility I hadn't considered, I'm considering now, is that Amp got up and opened the door for the offender and is immediately met with a gun to his face. And he stumbles back into the chair, right? That's a possibility that he did, that he was the one. Because I was thinking the whole time that one of the ladies did it, but they got up and then quickly laid back down. Because there's no guns, there's no blood spat or anything. All the indications are they were laying down when they were shot. So I think one possibility is that Amp was up and then fell back in the chair. Maybe he unlocked the door. But as far as like controlling the room, if you have 2 guys with 2 guns, let's say that is the scenario, hypothetically, right? Amp opens the door, they put a gun to his face, and he's like stumbling back into the chair. They shoot him once. The 2 women who are on the floor right there to the right of the door, they come in. The second shooter comes, turns. They're still laying down. Like this all happens in a second, and that guy turns around to them and boom, boom, starts shooting them. The other guy shoots Amp. This could have all happened in 10 seconds. It could have happened very, very quickly.
And just to cover his second part about there being could be why there's 2 crime scenes. I think we are not to that point. There's nothing that indicates that these 2 crime scenes are connected at this point in the investigation. And I think we need to make sure we keep that in mind, that we are taking this one step at a time and we are only investigating crime scene number 1 at the moment.
Yeah. So we will connect those dots later.
Okay. Crystal says, if Larry remembered correctly that he heard 2 voices, wouldn't it be most likely that those were the 2 perps that came in to do this and they both had a gun?
I mean, yeah, I think so.
And she continues to say, in general, what are the odds that 2 perps, they would have the same type of gun, provided they were in a gang or something like that?
Yeah, and I think she went on to say, like, would they buy them from the same people or whatever?
Yeah.
I just think, and again, I'll default to Zach on this because he knows it, but in my experience, like these are 38 calibers, much like a 22, which we covered back in season, or last season with Jody, season 15 with Jody. They're just a very common, inexpensive gun that you see a lot. Like in all those stats that I gave back during that one about the types of guns that are used in violent crimes, it's like those are the number 2. Like those are the 2 most popular guns, are like 22s and 38s, because the ammo's cheap, the guns can be bought cheap, and they're readily available. They're super common. So the fact that if 2 of them both had a 38, I don't think that would be odd at all.
Yeah, I mean, so the 38 special that I brought here is actually a fairly cheap model.
Yeah.
I just pulled up the price just to see. You can get them on sale for about $300.
The one you have.
The one I have, brand new.
Yeah.
So if you got them at a pawn shop or anywhere else, they could be a lot.
Yeah,
cheaper. But $300 for a gun is a very cheap.
Right, and there are much more like blued barrel cheaper. There are $150 versions
Absolutely.
of that gun.
Absolutely. Stacy says, did the defense originally catch the discrepancies between the police officer's statements and the reports? I'm surprised that they didn't come up with this, but we know at trial, as the trial goes on, I'm surprised they didn't come up, but we know how trial goes. So even if it did, it probably wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. There's kind of a mix in the files of where they came from. Some of them came from investigations that were done in some of Chris's appeals later, like as far as the Dame report. But my understanding is that his attorney absolutely did have Dame's report and just didn't catch it.
So that brings up our next question. Elise asked, why was Dame not called to testify?
Well, I tell you why the state didn't call him. Because of that report. I would like this trial, as you start to get this transcripts, it was pretty obvious to me what was going on here. Like all the ambiguity and all the gaps in the holes are exactly what I was talking about earlier, is that they were avoiding bad evidence. I mean, answer me this, right? So you find, I'll give you a little, but like this I'm just really pissed about it. So it's just one of many things. But let's say you find a bunch of fingerprints on the victim's car that doesn't belong to the victims, and you test it against Chris and it doesn't belong to Chris. Don't you think you'd want to find out who they belong to?
You sure think so?
The Gary PD didn't. Let's say you find some DNA on the victims and it's not Chris's. Or actually, let me backtrack. You find DNA on the victims. You've got a weak ass case against Chris Bynum. Wouldn't you think you'd want to go run that DNA, the male DNA that's on the victims, to find out if it's him, to solidify your case?
You sure think so?
Gary PD didn't. They weren't looking. So that's the answer. They weren't looking for bad evidence. They were like this entire trial was a horse and pony show. It was all just like smoke and mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's how do we give the least amount of it? What they relied on was the confession.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the confession, as you'll see when we get there, is complete, absolute, impossible nonsense. But it was because of that, they gave the jury the least amount of information possible so that they could lean more on the confession. And so they weren't going to call Dame to sit there when he's got a report where he wrote that Larry said, I have no idea who it was. He can't do that because we're going to have Larry come up and testify and say it was Chris Bynum. I know for a fact it was him.
Mm-hmm.
So how you can't square that circle. So you just leave him out.
And just was his report not included at all? So I mean,
not in the trial.
So okay, so the defense couldn't bring it up either.
The defense could have. The defense absolutely could have called him to the stand. And again, I don't know this for a fact, but from what I believe I was told, because I was one of the frustrations from one of the people that have been on the case for a long time, was that Chris's attorney had that report the whole time. Like, why wouldn't, like, yeah, if he had done I hate to shit on the guy, but
thorough job.
Not thorough. Yeah. Call him up because as far as her asking about the challenging of that, the challenging is the total amount of challenging is what I talked to you about in the episode in cross-examination, saying, did you make any reports? And Trevino goes, no, I don't believe so. And then he's like, well, how do we know this happened or whatever? And then, or is there any verification of this? And Trevino says, I think I wrote that in my report. That was the challenge.
Yeah.
That was all of it.
Oof. So Kathy asks, were Larry and Katrina biracial? Was Anthony Katrina's father? I'm wondering if this triple homicide was racially motivated.
Okay, so this is one of those weird things. I was talking to Dr. Jackson today, and I was actually talking to one of the attorneys yesterday. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Earlier when I said there was no care given at all to trying to figure out what actually happened here, there is no victimology information whatsoever done by the Gary Police Department. At trial, there wasn't. So I'm like, well, I should be able to look really quick and check, in the trial transcripts, in the police files, who's connected, where all these relationships were. You can't. So this is what I've surmised so far. One thing I do want to, I don't even know if correct, but at least put out there. Mentioned in the first episode that Amp was Angela's boyfriend. Nikki had said something to me that she thought Amp was Suzanne's boyfriend. And when I talked to her today, she's like, no, that Amp's son had told her that he was Suzanne's boyfriend. And I was like, well, I mean, Larry lived there, and he said but then I reread what Larry said, like literally about 5 minutes before you got here.
Mm-hmm.
And they were asking him, they said, who all lived at the house? And he said, my mom, my auntie, and her boyfriend, which I took to mean my auntie and my auntie's boyfriend.
Yeah.
But I think it's also could be read as my mom, my aunt, and my mom's boyfriend.
Correct.
It's a weird way to say it,
Mm-hmm.
but based on what Dr. Jackson told me, I think that's probably, but it's super ambiguous, right?
Right.
Because that's all we get is my mom, my aunt, and her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, but I'm going to default to, I guess, what Amp's son has told Dr. Jackson, which is that Amp was actually Suzanne's boyfriend. As far as the questions that Kathy's asking here, or whoever that was that Kathy? Yeah. So Katrina was Angela's son.
Okay.
As far as being biracial, all I can tell you is from photos of her later, she appears to be mixed race.
Okay.
So Angela's white,
mm-hmm.
And Katrina appears to be mixed race. She's not Amp's child. It's just Angela's child. Nobody seems to know who the father is of that one, of Katrina. Larry, there's also a question about, is Larry mixed race? Same thing. Don't know that the name of his father's in the file, but he appears also to be mixed race. Appears to be.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Suzanne's white, his mom's white. So you have, and then I think there's another question about who actually lived at the house. All I can give you with that, because I've heard different versions of that from different people, is Larry's testimony. And that part I was just reciting to you, or I guess paraphrasing, because I'm not looking at it. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. But the question was, who lived at the house? And he said his mom, Angela, and Amp lived at the house. So I believe all three of them lived there. The house belonged to Suzanne, Larry's mom.
Mm-hmm.
So Larry and Suzanne, like, that was their permanent resident. So according to Larry, Anthony also lived there, and then Angela and Katrina then would be living there too. But we have mattresses on the floor, so I don't know if that's a permanent situation or if she was just staying there for a minute. Again, these are all like important victimology things that we should know, like that we're going to try to find out, because this could be critically important to understanding what happened here. You guys all know, first step, victimology, right? Understand the victims. Why is Angela living on a mattress on the floor of her sister's house? And for how long? What is the reason? Could that identify some risk factor that we don't know about? All things that we're going to get into later.
Our next statement is from Sarah. It says, I'm struggling with the scenario that the front door being unlocked with two women sleeping on mattresses in the room. I just don't buy it. In the middle of nowhere, or in the middle of nowhere, or in a no crime small town, but not in an urban context, the women would have locked that door. So the shooting may have been after discussion or argument gone wrong.
I'll say what I always say. We have to always be very careful saying they wouldn't because I wouldn't. So I'm not saying the door was definitely left unlocked. What I'm saying is we don't know, and we can't assume, because we think that a person in that situation would do a thing. We just don't know that.
And our last one comes from Jason. It says, in the Polaroid picture, is it possible it was taken to capture the scene as it was prior to the victim being taken to the hospital? This would explain why it's taken before the crime scene tech had got there.
Yeah, and we talked about that earlier. I'm assuming that's what happened. I'm assuming that the EMS got there. Because of those incident priorities, they're working. I would assume that Trevino did a sweep of the house. They made sure there was no other victims. They made sure there was no other perpetrators there. EMS is about to transport. Mm-hmm. And I want to point out, this would be a smart thing to do. Is this would be like, let me real quick snap a couple photos before she gets moved. Smart thing to do. My only issue with it is that it was like, we don't know for a fact who took them and when. And the other part about it is it's hard to reconstruct the scene because the bodies have been moved. So presumably, even when those Polaroid photos were taken, Suzanne had already been moved, because they would definitely, like, if she was on her face, they would roll her over into a supine position so they could get to her airway and check her out. So she's probably already been moved at that point in the first picture we have. And then when we have the crime scene photos, there's more. So if you look on the website, I put some notes on a couple of the pictures that I put up. They're a little hard to see, but I redact the bodies out. I try to do as best I can, but it kind of looks just like big blobs. I even put like white lines between, because Suzanne and Angela were like in the Polaroid photos are kind of like on top of each other. Like they're so when you redact out both bodies, it looks like one big black blob. So I try to put like a white line between them so you can see the differentiate and mark where the head was and where the legs were and stuff. But in the Polaroid photo, Angela is on her, I might have this backwards, but she's on her like right hip. In the 35 millimeter photos taken by Bertossi, she's on her left hip, or vice versa. They're switched. So when Bertossi's investigating the crime scene and documenting it, Suzanne's gone and Angela's body has been moved. And we don't know if she had been moved, because you can also see where Suzanne's body is when you see the gauze in there. It looks like EMS has already started treating her, and you can see this huge pool of blood on the mattress that looks like that's where she was shot in the head. Seems pretty obvious that's where she was, but that's not where she was found at the end. So again, we're gonna as we go along, we're gonna get deeper into the crime scene. We're gonna do our own analysis of it. We're gonna get outside the testimony. But as we're going from here this week on Sunday, tune in. It's a really interesting, complicated crime scene. And that's the one at the ballpark. So tune in on Sunday for the next episode, The Double Homicide. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye, guys. Thanks, everybody.
You're out of order.
I know. She got me with it last week, so.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Man, 44 people. We should just always do these in the middle of the day.
Come on, JV.
Bunch of people.
Where are you at?
Well, I'm going to go back to school in a few weeks, so let me screwed anyway. All right, guys, we're going to end this. I'm hungry. It's past my lunch break. It's past my lunchtime. It's feeding time. And I got to go to the gym and rewrite this episode again.
Yes, I got to see what my kids are doing.
So we'll talk to you, streamers. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Talk to you later. Bye.